Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. Today I'm going to be taking a second look at the Styroplast product, which is a product produced for foam coating made by the Hotwire Foam Factory. They sent me this sample to try out and do a review of it, and based on some of the feedback that I got back from some viewers on the initial impressions video, I've done a couple experiments with it, and based on some of the things that I really liked about it, I've gone ahead and applied it to this mountaintop modular board, which I had mentioned I might do in the last video. And so what I'd like to do is take you in close here and show you some of the experiments that I did, some of the results that came out of it, and give you at least some idea, I think, about a variety of ways you might be able to use the Styroplast product in your own terrain. So if you didn't see in the first video where I reviewed the product, you might want to go back and take a look at it. I'll put a link down below in the description. But Styroplast is a two-part, basically polyurethane plastic that's designed to coat foam to give it better strength properties. One of the questions that came up initially was about priming Styroplast, and this was raised as a concern from the manufacturers themselves, said that it might be difficult. Now, Styroplast does have a very, very glossy finish, but what I did is, without touching this at all with any kind of sandpaper or anything, I just gave it a quick coat of primer. I used the Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover. That's the 2X paint. That's a very good spray paint if you're interested in quality spray paint. Very quick coverage. And then I used the Rust-Oleum Automotive Primer, which I'm presuming would have a better bond to things than, say, standard, just flat paint, not marketed as a primer. Now, when I rub my fingers over or whatever, it feels like it's got good adhesion. I am able, if I dig into it, oh, now I can't actually. Oh, that's interesting. Huh, oh, if I get a really sharp edge on there, I can scratch it, but actually this seems to have cured quite well. I'm unable to really get that off there, and on the double X, Rust-Oleum black cover, I can't get that off either. Huh. Well, you can see here I did scratch it when I first applied it, and perhaps the paint hadn't fully cured. So now that the paint has really set up, that's a great bond. That's not coming off at all. So I don't think priming this material is going to be much of a problem for most people. Having done that, I decided to try it out on the test piece that I had created before. Principally, I was interested in seeing how well it filled voids, which is something I might want to avoid on a piece like this, and then how would it take paint and subsequent, layering. I did spray prime this after I put on the Styroplast. I brushed it in very aggressively. I tried to brush it out of cracks as much as I could, and it ended up filling some of the lines that I had cut that were very, very thin. So they do show a little bit, but they don't show the way they had originally been intended to show. But saying that, overall, I think it gave a very nice appearance. And I subsequently painted this to give it a stone-like finish, and I was quite pleased actually with how that came out, and the material makes this surface really, really tough. Very difficult to chip this or break pieces out of this. This has given this an armor coating, really, that's going to stand up to any kind of tabletop use for years to come. So then I decided to take a look at it as a surface coating material that could then have sand applied to it. So I applied this to a sheet of foam core, and then immediately sprinkled, let me see here, almost immediately sprinkled it with sand on this side. And then I let it sit for just a couple minutes, and then sprinkled sand on this side. And both of these gave very good adhesion. The texture looks just like when I finish, sanding over a foam coat, their plaster foam coating system, and is going to really be very difficult to get any of this sand off of this surface, especially little bits of gravel and whatnot. If they're applied early enough, they're going to bed into it, and you're going to get a really durable surface. The other thing that I noticed, which I was very pleased about, is that it didn't cause any warping in the foam core. Now, this wasn't a perfectly flat piece, mind you, but it didn't really change at all after the Styroplast cured, which is nice, and it's something I would really expect from a plastic, but it's nice to just double check it. So no expansion or contraction causing warping, so you're going to get good consistency out of the leveling of your boards if you apply this product to it. Lastly, a lot of people had asked me about casting with it. So I decided to take a simple mold, it's an open-faced mold, and try to cast a couple pieces. Now I did this after I had done, you know, this part and this part, so the resin was even starting to just thicken up just a little bit, and I figured why not just go for it. I had extra in the cup, so I thought I'd see. So basically, with this kind of a casting, if you haven't done any casting yourself, you know, it's just sort of a pour. Then you put a little piece of glass over the surface to press it down so you get a nice flat surface, squeeze out the extra. And I did kind of brush in the rubber into these areas, the plastic, the Styroplast, to just try to make sure I could eliminate air bubbles as much as possible. The material is a bit softer, keep it in frame here, is a bit softer than most casting plastics that I've used in the past. Of course, it's not intended to be a casting plastic, but the pieces that come out, they hold great detail. I mean, it's a perfect cast. It looks great. And what's interesting is because it's softer, you know, it's got quite a bit of give in it. And this is one of the things that's probably a really good property for protecting foam, because really you want something that's going to be able to take a dent and not crack or fracture. So because this has a lot of give to it, you know, surfaces that are coated with it are going to yield to a force and not break. So can you cast with it? Definitely. And it's probably best suited for simple casts where they're open-faced, shallow, although, I don't know, you could try a deeper pour, but I thought this was a good application, as many people I see online who are interested in doing a small amount of casting for themselves are interested in doing things like emblems, icons, shoulder plates, replicating weapons, simple one-sided casts that are pretty easy to do, and this excels in that. And so here you can see the side of the mountain face that I'm building, and because I basically modeled the test piece that I showed you before off of, what I wanted to show here, and since I like the test piece so much, I decided to go ahead and do the Styroplast coating on this. Now, one of the things I noticed from the test piece was that you lost some of the small lines from the fill that the plastic, because it has a pretty heavy body, viscosity, it's going to fill into some of those areas and be difficult to brush out. So I made a pretty concerted effort with this piece to actually aggressively try to brush out the Styroplast as I went along. I basically did a quick coat all the way around, then I went back in with a brush, a stiff bristled brush, and in the end I was actually dipping the brush in acetone to clean it off and to leave just a tiny bit of acetone on the tips of the bristles. I mean, we're talking almost dry brush level, very, very small amount, just to see if I could get a little more aggressive wiping on this. It doesn't seem to have affected adversely the curing properties anywhere on here. The entire piece is set up beautifully. It's rock hard. I feel really good about any of these pieces coming out. And an interesting thing to note is that when I made multiple cuts in this surface, there are lots of loose pieces that are sort of in there floating around that are kind of hard to pick out by hand. And I actually had already gone around with a pair of tweezers and had picked out numerous pieces around it. Just prior to the applying of the Styroplast and knowing that it's going to fill in thin cuts, I went back in and actively scored many more areas to try to create wider gaps to give a much broken up feel to this, for fear of it filling in. Well, what you can see is the end result. It's a fairly well preserved face of the rocks, but you can tell in key areas that some of these cracks have been filled in lightly. Now, I'm not too concerned about that, because as long as there's any kind of textural change on the surface, it's going to pick up dry brushing and show as a stratified layer. And that's really the goal with a piece like this. So I'm not overly concerned about it, but it is something to take note that if you have a lot of really fine detail in the surface of the material that you want to protect, Styroplast might not be the best choice because it can be a little thicker. But anything large, irregular surfaces, especially where you have a material like foam, which can be quite fragile, and you have little corners like this that stick out everywhere, this is going to build a lot of protection into it with a very, very thin coat. I'm really pleased with how it's come out on this so far, and I plan on then applying foam coat to the broad, flat surfaces, and the foam coat with the boost I'm expecting is going to give a very good bond to these edges right here, and then it'll just be a perfect sort of combo of protecting large flat areas with the foam coat and then protecting the more irregular, more fragile areas with the Styroplast. So, Just before wrapping up with the Styroplast product here, I just wanted to mention I did get contacted by the manufacturer, and he did reassure me that when the material goes into full distribution regularly, the syringe that's used to measure out the parts will be pre-drilled to accommodate the thicker consistency of the Styroplast, and that the syringe is cleanable, and he included some directions on how to clean it so that it could be reusable. And that's nice because I can see that syringe coming in very handy, especially if you want to mix up small amounts of these products to be able to do simple casts like I showed you before, which is an application I could see a lot of terrain enthusiasts being interested in doing. I just wanted to also give credit to the Hot Wire Foam Factory for coming out with a different kind of product than their foam coat, which is a nice complement to it. I really feel like putting foam coat on the side of this wouldn't be as protective as I had hoped for, because it doesn't have the same kind of resiliency to flexing the way this material will. So the two of them give you the option of applying the right product to the right area to get the right level of protection. So that's probably the biggest kudos I can give for coming out with this product. I really like what it brings to the the sort of palette of tools that you can use. If I were to have any concerns about the Styroplast, it would only be that I'd like to see it perhaps have a slightly longer cure time. Pilot life on it's about 15 minutes, and while that sounds like a long time, it took me well over 15 minutes to brush it into this material, and I felt like I was really at a race, especially because with any kind of urethane plastics, when you mix them up in a cup, their higher amount of volume increases the temperature, the reaction starts to speed up, becomes a feedback loop. So I wanted to get it out of that cup as fast as I could, get it onto this, then do my final detail brushing. 15 minutes is a little tight for detail work, and I think it might be possible, so if I had any suggestions, it might be possible to get some retarding chemicals that you can add to it. A lot of times you can add, you basically buy a small bottle of a certain agent that you can add, say, so many drops per ounce of material, and you can affect the cure time on it. Might be possible to do that, or they might be able to release it with a variety of cure times, slow set, fast set, medium set, that sort of idea. But even without that as a possibility, I would still highly recommend Styroplast. I think it's pretty versatile. It's definitely performing well under my experiments that I've done so far, and it's nice that you, and it's nice to be able, I guess that's versatility, to be able to do a variety of things with it. So, in conclusion, I just wanted to thank the Hot Wire Foam Factory for giving me a chance to do this review. I really have been pretty excited with using this product, and I'm looking forward to using it in more projects in the future. And if you haven't visited the Hot Wire Foam Factory, I recommend you take a look. Because they focus on foam, cutting foam, protecting foam, texturizing foam, it's a great place to look if you're looking for particular materials or tools to be able to get your terrain project looking just the way you want. And I want to say that you should keep an eye out on the channel as well. I'll come back in a little bit with a video that follows up this piece, shows you it in its completed state, and I'll discuss a little bit more about any observations I had on the material once I painted it up and flocked it. So thanks again for joining me, and I'll be back real soon with another video.